and I hear my other guests here. Let me stop sharing, flip over, and I'm going to go from one damn good guest to another. We're joined with Michael Maloof, one of my favorite people to talk to. How you doing, my man? You doing okay today? You doing all right?
I'm good. I'm good. I've known Randy for years. He's a good guy.
He is, and he knows his stuff. I mean,
Oh yeah.
only thing I can do is sit there and listen to him. I mean, he was giving a great rundown, like historical context of this is how we got here.
That's important. Most people don't
no, it
know.
is. No, it really is. Because he is right. There were a lot of people who were out there acting as if these are gay-friendly terrorists. And this is the new norm for Syria. This is great. This is democracy. And people like me were like, oh my God, you've just put ISIS in charge of a country. You've created a caliphate.
That's what's happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Israel's going to suffer for it ultimately.
Now, you go into that for me. Why do you? Because Israel, from its point of view, it is creating this kind of David's quarter where they are literally taking over, let's say, half or let's say a large swath of southern Syria.
Yeah.
They commanding the Syrian military, effectively telling the Syrian military where it can go and where it can't go, which is astonishing. And in their mind, they want to get closer to Iraq. And in their mind, this allows them to do that, effectively using the Druze as, hey, we're protecting the Druze, despite the fact that we're committing a genocide in Gaza. Why do you think this is going to ultimately hurt them? Go into that for me.
Well, there's so many aspects to this. First of all, the Israelis for years have backed the Druze, and the Druze have been supportive of the Israelis. It's historical. In fact, a lot of the IDF troops are Druze,
and, right?
And they're sort of a Shia offshoot, and they'll even have. They also have within Lebanon, especially, they'll have major conflicts with Christians and to a lesser degree with Sunnis, other Sunnis. But Hezbollah almost took out the Druze leader a number of years ago, and basically surrounded his home. And Jumblat is his name. He's still alive. I don't know why he hasn't. I mean, these guys live forever. These tyrants just live forever. Jesus. And at any rate, the reason I say that is that Galani, the current president of Syria, is really not in full control of the other minorities and militias within Syria. There's already internal dissension among them. They're rising. They're increasingly going against him, even though he's trying to give an outward appearance of legitimacy and respectability.
Yeah.
But the reality is, you put him side by side with his old pictures, dressed in a keffiyeh and spouting the mantra of Al Qaeda. He's still the same guy, and he's supposed to be controlling all of these other militia offshoots that are just as rabid as ISIS itself. They're varying degrees of ISIS. They're all competing among one another, and it's not going to be very easy for him to keep that under control for much longer. And now he has the Israelis fighting him, but in fact the Israelis basically, along with the Turks, put him in.
Yes.
So and now they think that the Israelis think that they have command of not only northern Lebanon but also southern Syria, which they envision as part of their Greater Israel ambitions. Once again, which they claim it goes back to their biblical views, and this is and you hear leadership in Israel today still chanting that, they that is their plan, is ultimately to take it all back, and but this to what extent? But you also hear Galani saying that he has Syria. The next step is Jerusalem. So inevitably, Israel, I think, and Galani may come to blows, or for that matter, the minorities under him may also come to blows with Israel. Israel is really playing with fire.
It's weird because it's such a contradiction in some of the stuff. Like you'd see
Oh,
one
yes.
guy wearing an ISIS patch, screaming that he's going to go and murder Druze because they're working with the Zionists, and it's like, dude, your boss has been bending over backwards.
I rest my case.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's completely bizarre. And it's like these guys wouldn't lift a finger to go after Israel, despite the fact that Israel has been bombing the military capability, bombing, stealing territory.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so you're going after another Muslim group, whereas Israel has been doing all of this stuff, like taking territory. It's so strange. And it gives this kind of sense that, well, it's obvious who they're working for. Like, it's obvious that this guy's an agent. It's obvious at this point. I mean, I watched a speech where the British guy was talking about how he shaved the beard, got him a suit, gave him a bath, and then, redid him as Galani, the tough guy, the good-looking guy with the tough past. Like, he's clearly doing everything in his power. I mean, even going to Israel saying, hey, we have the same enemies. Israel doesn't care. That's the wild part. Do you think that the United States knew? Or do you think that they were out the loop on this?
Well, since ISIS is a creation of the United States.
No, just to be clear, I just mean the bombing that took place, where they effectively bombed Presidential Palace, bombed.
No, I think, they're making every effort to try and stop it. A lot of it has to do with Druze and Arab tribesmen being attacked within that area, and you got the Israelis back in the Druze who are subject to attack by the Arab tribes that are occurring there, and that's just going to suck Israel in even further. It's going to continue one way or another. It's just but it's all part of. You see, the Israelis basically are using the Druze as their shoehorn into Syria.
Yes, and it's working.
It's working to a point, but again, I don't see how the Israelis can continue to do this. First of all, without U.S. help. Secondly, without further getting isolated in the world as a result of their actions, and that's one of the things that I think inevitably is going to have to happen. That the world just rises up and says, we've had enough of the Israeli apartheid expansionists and wanton killing. They basically, because the West is not objecting to it, they feel that it's legal, that they're entitled to do that, and nobody is stopping them.
The other element to that is very similar to what the Israelis are doing is the Galani government. I mean, they effectively have all of these groups who've been going through murdering ethnic minorities, whether it was the Alawites, Christians, the Shias.
Well, the Alawites really, I mean, they were killing people on the streets.
Yeah.
And this is barbaric. We're in the 21st century. This shouldn't be happening. We developed all these institutions, international institutions to prevent this. They're not working. We're in a new state of barbarism today. Even though the figment of an international institution exists, it's powerless. It is useless.
An argument can be made that he was put there for that specific purpose. Like at the point where you bring somebody in that goes on a killing spree of ethnic minorities all throughout Syria, you effectively damaged any notion of Syria. You balkanized the state. How could the Druze be part of Syria if you are out here killing Druze? How can Alawites be part of Syria if you're murdering Alawites? What are the Kurds going to think when they're watching you do this? Like, how can this be a
Well,
Syria?
the Christians
Or
have basically
Christians?
left Syria.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the Christians. In fact, Christianity came through there 2,000 years ago, through Syria first, and then through into Georgia, what's today Georgia, and all that. I mean, very very early on there, and of course you saw what happened in Iraq. The Christians basically fled, and
Mhm.
it's a disaster. And now Lebanon is next, and that's where my grandparents came from, and I'm really concerned about their legacy and their history, and because of what this turmoil that's occurring at the hands of the Israelis. They're stirring the pot.
When you said Lebanon is next, are you referring to the terrorist dogs in Syria, or are you referring to Israel?
Israeli dogs.
Yeah. Yeah.
You say they want Lebanon, especially the southern part. As part of their design, they want northern
Southern Syria.
northern Lebanon and southern Syria, and also parts of Iraq. That Euphrates to the Nile is also an Israeli term.
Mhm.
It's really an Israeli term because that's what they envision as Greater Israel.
But you think this is over? They're overextended at this point. I mean, it's a country of
I think
8.8
so.
million people.
I don't know unless they have their own industries to build war production, which they don't. They've been getting it from the U.S. The U.S. ultimately has got to stop providing war material to them in order to get them to tone down. And but right now, I just don't see it. Plus, Netanyahu is on the brink of having internally, politically, having a walkout of his own Likud party because he's not radical enough.
I saw that. I saw that. The ultra Orthodox walk.
Yeah, the ultra Orthodox are ready to walk.
Yeah.
So they could bring down, I mean, maybe that's what needs to be done. But even then, he could still rule a minority government until 2026.
And do you think that another government would do anything different? I mean, because as you pointed out, they're accomplishing their objectives. In their mind, we want greater Israel. We believe that this is the time where we can do it. We can
They're
murder.
doing it, but
Yeah.
they all want regime change in Iran as well.
Right.
So they're going to have to act fast to stay within their timetable, and so that they can realize it in their own lifetime, basically, and while they're in power. And they need they absolutely need the United States to pull that off.
Mhm.
I'm hoping that support dries up because we got our own problems.
Speaking of our own problems, I would like to get your take on something. So Donald Trump apparently has decided he is going to give weapons to Ukraine. He is threatening Putin with an ultimatum. Now, nobody believes that the ultimatum is really going to go through because that would damage the United States, and Russia is not going to care. They'll continue to pursue their course on the battlefield, but that will be something that hits all of us in the wallets of the gas tank, inflation, and everything else. So it's kind of a weird thing to do. It's kind of like Europe, what Europe did, where Europe damaged itself in process of trying to go after the Russians, and the Russians still were making more money on behalf of it just because of the cost of gas going up. But the other part to that, though, is the weapons that are being sent. Now, this is a bit theater in some part because it is unclear where the weapons are even coming from at this point, where the Patriot batteries are coming from. Donald Trump is saying that he is going to get the Europeans to pay for it. Okay, well, many of the European states, Czech Republic, France, there was another one, Hungary, there was one more. It's like, we're not doing that. Italy, we're not doing that. We're not going to buy your weapons. This is a scam. We're not going to participate in that scam. We would prefer to do our own weapons industry. But nevertheless, they're still pursuing this. Germany is stupid enough to do it. The UK is stupid enough to do it. And so they're going to buy weapons from the US in order to give to Ukraine. Now, the catch becomes, what type of weapons are they going to give? Now, Financial Times came out with an article, came out with this. Now, I've had debates with people on this, where people said they think Financial Times is getting this wrong. But Financial Times said Donald Trump asked Zelensky if Ukraine could hit Moscow, say people who were briefed on the call. And Trump retorted. Also, Zelensky effectively said, look, if you give me the weapons, I could. And Trump said, hit St. Petersburg also. Now, when Trump was asked about this, Trump said, no, I don't want him to hit Moscow. But that could just be what his mouth says. That may not necessarily be what he told Zelensky in private. The first question is, do you think he actually told Zelensky that in private?
I tend to doubt it, because he'd have to give him the. First of all, Zelensky does have a capability now to hit Moscow with drones, other than and not because he doesn't, even though he doesn't have the right type of ballistic missile. Right. So he technically has that capability. In fact, drones that have been, I mean, they're shooting drones over Moscow all the time. They're getting shot down, and you'll recall that one or two hit the Kremlin itself last year, I believe. And so they have the capability, but not with ballistic missiles. Trump was clear publicly in saying that he wanted them to have defensive weapons, Patriot, not offensive. So, but again, the question is, where do these things come from? Now, this may be Trump being bombastic, talking about the deal. He's always got to have a deal attached to everything, and agree that the Europeans have signed off so that he can show some image of leadership in the NATO structure. Yeah. But at the same time, you have Germany, France, and UK going on their own. They're setting up a little tripartite group now, in which they envision being independent of Washington, and so that they're now working in that direction. They're calling it the group of the willing. Yeah. Huh? So yeah, so they're acting as they're approaching this now as though the U.S. begins to fade out, and they're on their own. So it's going to be something that may emerge, but I don't know how they can afford to do that. They're all broke, and they've all relied on the United States. I mean, the road to hell has always been paved with good intentions, and this is not an exception to that. So I unless they somehow can come up with money, and they're having to divert funds out of pensions and what have you, and the people themselves are recoiling from any further assistance. It's the elites, these three that, they think they're really hot stuff, and so they hobnob around, but not realizing that their constituents don't want it. So it's going to be an interesting 5 years to come, and that's why Zelensky basically hasn't sat down and agreed to a third round of negotiation, because he's getting these assurances from the Europeans to continue fighting. But yet Trump continues to blame Putin for not coming to the negotiating table. And I think that's due to the fact that Trump, he only takes what people tell him, and he's not being told that this is what's occurring.
But Politico reported that Donald Trump knows that Russia is going to win this, or for the most part, have won this.
Well, it's just by sheer strength, yeah.
Right. And yet, here we are. I mean, Donald Trump could walk. He could have always just walked. Even now, he could walk. Well, I don't know if he could walk now, because at this point, this is his war. But
that's his war. Yeah.
For the first 3 months, could have credibly walked and say, this is Joe Biden's war. I'm out.
Well, I'm hoping he does, in fact, wind things down. That's why he sort of said, well, it's going to be up to NATO to do it. Well, you're part of NATO, sweetheart. And you're supplying the weapons. You're involved. You're aiding and abetting. You're directly engaged.
You're part of NATO, sweetheart. Yeah. I mean, he's being too cute by half, is the way Malik used to say.
Totally.
Because he's trying to act as if his pitch of, I'm going to end the war, was really, I'm just going to get somebody else to pay for the war. And it's
Yeah.
like, dude, that's not
It's nonsense.
what it was.
It's nonsense. I mean,
No,
again, he's doing what the Democrats used to do to us. Don't believe your lying eyes when you see the guy stumbling around and acting half stupid when you know
Yeah.
that he's got a real mental issue. But it's amazing that they just think we're fundamentally stupid, and we're not. We're educated people, and we get other sources of information, and we see it for ourselves.
That's right. Do you really think that I don't believe for a moment that Europe is going to put troops in Ukraine. I don't think that that's stupid.
They can't afford it.
Well, not just can't afford it, those people will get eaten alive.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, that's the other side of it. Yeah. But what are they going to defend? You got Poland, Lithuania, and Hungary. They all want to take back portions of West Ukraine. Look, it's an artificial state, pure and simple. And you don't see Russia. You don't see Putin clamoring to take over Kyiv, even though he could march to the Polish border tomorrow if he wanted to. But that's not his goal. His goal was to just, at the request of Russian-speaking people in those regions, to come to their assistance, and he did that. And the problem now he's encountering is the fact he's got to create a buffer, because if longer range missiles do come in,
right,
that could reach Moscow, St. Petersburg, etc., or even deeper inside of Russia, where do you draw that line? He may go to the Dnieper, he may and take Odessa, or he may even go up to Kyiv. I don't know, but it really depends upon getting Zelensky to the negotiating table. And as long as he feels that Zelensky feels he's getting encouragement from the Europeans of backing, he's not gonna sit down and talk. And that's the raw edge of it all.
Why do you think Donald Trump gave 50 days? He's getting criticism for it. I mean, look, I don't. It could be a bluff. What is it, Taco Trump? Trump always chickens out. Ultimately,
well, I think he was calling. I think he's giving. And he's not calling for sanctions just yet. So, right. Yeah, he wants to work. He wants to work with Putin, but he wants Putin to negotiate, to sit down and agree to negotiate. But as I said, given this encouragement that Zelensky is getting, there's no point in Zelensky wanting to sit down and talk. That's why the Russians are saying, "Look, we've already agreed to meet in Istanbul for a third time, but you haven't given us a date, and we're ready to move and meet with you." I don't know that Trump knows that, and that's what's bothersome to me. I think his own intelligence community and the people and the pro-Ukrainians within the IC on the U.S. side are not giving him all the data, and he needs to know this.
The reality of it is, though, Trump either accepts the deal or not. I mean, what Trump wants Putin to accept is nonsense. That's off the table. You losers don't get to dictate terms. And so it's one thing. Go ahead. If you disagree with that.
No, I don't disagree. I think that, again, Zelensky doesn't have much to play with. He doesn't have much leverage. In fact, he has no leverage. And I don't know what he's waiting for. Except that he keeps getting the European encouragement. But they need to show up with stuff, and I haven't seen it.
Yeah. And
the only way they're going to produce anything from Europe is if the U.S. backfills them. But then Trump's requirement is that they pay for it.
Yes, which many of them say, hell no.
Yeah.
Many of them are like, we're not doing that.
Yeah, we're not doing it.
Well, they slick. I mean, all of that money is fleeing Europe and fleeing into the United States.
Yeah,
it's from
this whole thing is just a morass. And people are jockeying for position, but yet nothing happens. But here again, it's Trump has got to. I think that Trump and Putin need to be talking or even meeting directly, and so that Trump understands what is going on. He may have an idea about it. He may, but for him to keep calling for Putin to negotiate, well, Putin's ready to negotiate. It's Zelensky that's holding out and coming to the table. He won't give a date to meet. Period.
But I see, for me, Donald Trump is the main mover and shaker on this.
I think it's getting out of his control.
Do you? Well, if Putin comes out
because he's being slow rolled by everybody.
Well, if Putin comes out and says, I am willing to freeze the conflict. However, what I need is assurances: A, no NATO expansion; B, stop filling Ukraine with weapons.
He's done that.
I know. That's my point. That's my point. And that is like
not happening.
Well, I guess that's kind of my point. When Putin said that, they told him no. Europe was like, we're not doing that. Trump is like, we're not agreeing to that.
So we are where we are.
What do you think this ends up, by the way? And this could be the closing question. What do you think this ends? What do you think? Because I've asked this question for 3 years. Wars are easy to start. They're hard as hell to end. And the moment that you stop, meaning the moment that Putin says, okay, we're going to stop here, whatever's left fills itself with weapons again.
I think he'll go as far as he can inside of Ukraine, until which time he feels he has sufficient territory to minimize any threat, should there ever be a longer range missiles inside of what's left of Ukraine. And I don't think it'll be much.
Yeah.
I think he'll at least he may even go a little beyond the Dnieper River, which is the sort of the dividing point between East and West Ukraine.
Yeah.
But much of that area is still Russian speaking, and much of it wants protection. Mm-hmm. But I think that I think he'll stop on his own, and like he did in Georgia, like Putin did in Georgia years ago, and he still has Abkhazia, South Ossetia, and I think that you're going to see basically a frozen conflict in Ukraine as you do now in Georgia.
That's ugly.
Well, what's happening with Georgia is very intriguing. You got the EU wanting to take Georgia off the SWIFT system. Things are changing because your EU thinks Georgia is becoming now too Russified. And
it's not too Russified. They just don't want to be taken. I mean, the EU spent all of this money and treasure to try to overthrow the Georgian government, and even had a French spy working as a president going against her own government. And then they were pissed off that they couldn't do it. And now they're like, okay, well, it's just outrageous. It's just outrageous.
The Dream Party tends to be more pro-Russian.
Yeah.
But this is I don't want to get into the whole Georgia thing because we don't have the time. But the reality is that may be the way things go inevitably over the course of many years in Ukraine. It just sort of peters out. Hopefully. Because the Europeans can't continue to supply it, but militarily, Putin can come down and like a hammer if he wants to. But he's been very restrained. He may jack that up in the weeks to come, and that's what I envision could happen if the Ukrainians fail to come to the negotiating table.
Well, he was sending 700 drones a day, and apparently they're producing 500 a day, so they can send 500 a day if they need to.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
he's got an inventory.
Yeah, Michael Maloof, man, I always appreciate these conversations. Thank you for this. I really do. Sure. You be safe. And just so the audience will know, Michael Maloof, he is a former senior security policy analyst in the Office of Secretary of Defense, author, regular contributing analyst on RT and other media outlets, and he has nearly 30 years of federal service in the Department of Defense. Michael, have a fantastic day, man. Thank you for this.
You too. Thank you, Joel. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, guys, we have come to